Hey guys, here the other day I was scrolling through Twitter and ran across this post from the folks over on Signal, and they're saying, hey, we've got a request to our community. Signal is blocked in Iran. You can help people in Iran connect to Signal by hosting a proxy server. Now, of course, this isn't just something we would use in this one instance. This is something that you could set up for any kind of instance where a relay for a chat program like this might be applicable. We're going to specifically focus on Signal in this case, but this kind of gave me an idea to kind of show how to set up a relay for Signal for whether it's this use case or any other use case where Signal might not be accessible. And that's what I want to cover in this video. So the folks over at Signal have actually put together a Docker container that will allow us to do this. And I really love that they've made it that easy for us. So what we're going to do in this video is actually get this Signal relay installed on Linode. And that way we can kind of help out with the greater good of communication across the world. So you may wonder, well, why would I want to use Linode? I've already got a Docker server. And the reason for that is for your own privacy and protection. In case your URL gets out there, you don't necessarily want that tied to your home IP address, right? So in this case, this is one of those cases where it's better to use a third-party service to make sure that they can't target your home server. So that's kind of what's going on here. That's why we're going to do this with Linode. So that's why I'm really excited that Linode partnered with me on this video idea. In fact, if you head down to the description, you'll find a link that will give you $100 in free credit to check them out with no obligations for 60 days. They're just going to give you $100 to test out their servers, look at their service, that sort of thing. And I think this is a great way to jump into that. So again, head down to the description where you'll get $100 in free credit for 60 days. With that said though, let's jump over to Linode and get this set up. So in order to get started, the first thing we want to do obviously is log in to our Linode dashboard. And here we are, I'm logged in on my Linode dashboard. And there's a couple of things that I want to do. First, I need to create a Linode, and then I also need to set up a domain. So what I want to do is start with creating a Linode. What I want to do is actually come over here to Marketplace, just to save us some steps and some configuration, that sort of thing. What I want to do is actually go over here and select an app. I type in Docker. I'm going to select that. I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to minimize the advanced options. I'm not going to worry about that right now. We've got some options under select an image for which operating system we'd like to use. I'm going to use Debian 11. You could use 10 or Ubuntu, whichever you'd like to do, but I'm going to use Debian 11 for this. The region is kind of up to you as far as how you want to handle this. Normally I would say, pick a region that's close to you so that you've got the least amount of latency when you're doing things. However, we are not necessarily in this case doing something for ourselves. So however you decide to use this, pick the region that makes the most sense as far as the geolocation of where the server is and compare that to where the service is going to be used. Try to pick something close so you get the least amount of latency possible. For me, again, just for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to select Dallas, Texas here. And then because we're just using this as a traffic relay, basically, I'm just going to come over here and select a shared CPU option. And I'm going to go with the 2 gig Linode option here. It gives me 2 gigs of RAM, plenty of storage, plenty of everything that we're going to need for this with a bunch of overhead. You could be more conservative and go with the 1 gig. It's completely up to you. So the next thing I want to do is scroll down and select the label. For this, I'm just going to call this Signal relay, like so. And I'm going to give it a root password. You can add a tag if you'd like. I'm not going to. So now that I've got my my root password entered here, the next thing we can do if we want is add or enable an SSH key. I'm going to skip that because it's not set up on my system here, but you could absolutely do that. We're not going to attach to a VLAN. Backups are probably a good idea, as well as a private IP address. Once we've got all this selected, I'm just going to scroll down and click on Create Linode. We're going to give this a second to do its thing. Once we get to the next screen, it's going to say provisioning, that sort of thing. And once we get to that point, we can, like it says here, now we can come over to our domains and add a domain, create a domain up here in the top right. I'm going to put in my domain name. I'm going to use dbtech.tips for this. Mostly because I've already got that domain's name servers pointed to Linode and it's set up and ready to go. If you're not sure how to point a domain to Linode, they've got plenty of resources that explain which name servers you need to use to point your domain to. So definitely check that out if you need to. We've got, next thing we want to do is add an email address. Once we've got that, we want to insert some default records for one of our Linodes. So we're going to select that. We're going to select, in this case, the Signal relay for that and click on Create Domain. we're going to give this a few minutes to do its thing and kind of propagate in the background, that sort of thing. Here we can see we've got our IP address for this set up and ready to go. So now we can come back to Linode's. Here is our signal relay. Let's open this up. It says that it's running, so our next step would actually be to get logged in to our server via SSH. In order to do that, what we're going to do is click right up here where it says SSH access. We're going to click the little copy icon right there and then open a terminal window. I'm going to use just a Windows command prompt, but you can use whichever command prompt or terminal you want to use, whatever is most comfortable for you. So I'm just going to go ahead and paste in, oops. Let's just do SSH root at 69.164.198.37. Hey, have you ever connected to the server before? Doesn't look like it. Are you sure? Yes, I am. So I'm going to type in yes. And now that IP address has been added to our permanent list of known hosts. So we're good to go. So if we go over to the tutorial that Signal has put together here, we've already done 1 and 2. Our next step will be step 3, where we're going to actually use git clone to clone their GitHub repository. So we're going to copy that. So we'll paste that in there. Click enter. Now it's going to go ahead and it is cloned that GitHub repository over to our server. So now we want to cd into Signal TLS proxy. That's the folder that it put everything in. We'll hit enter. And the next thing it's saying, step 5 here, is we want to run this command, this init certificate.sh. Let's actually take a look at it first, so we're actually taking a look to see what's in there versus just blindly running a command. So we're going to do a nano and then init like so. So basically, what it's doing is in this bash file, it's kind of looking through it. We're going to run a certbot Docker image, and what we're going to do with that image is generate a certificate for the domain name that we plan on using for this relay. And basically, it's this is kind of setting some paths. It's saying, hey, enter a domain name, and then it's going to set that as a variable. Basically, it's going to, and then if it's found additional data or data that's already existing, it's going to say, hey, do you want to do that? Do you want to replace that data? Yes or no? And then our answer there will also be set as a variable there under decision. And then it's just going to go ahead and copy the GitHub user content from certbot in order to pull the certificates that it needs. And then it's going to go ahead and generate that certificate, and it's going to do that using the certbot Docker image that we've got down here running on port 80. So that's kind of what's going on with this bash file. Just kind of wanted to run through that. Again, I don't think it's ever a good idea to just blindly run commands, and that's kind of what's going on here. Is we're setting up the domain name. We're saying, hey, yes, we want to do this. Then it's going to pull everything, generate a Docker container to pull their certificates, and once it's done, it's actually going to shut down that Docker image or that Docker container so that we can move forward with the rest of the installation process. So there you go. So we're going to go ahead and exit out. So let's actually do a sudo /init certificate sh and hit enter. Here it's asking for our domain name. So I'm going to do dbtech.tips, oops, like so, and hit enter. So it's going to go through and pull certbot, get certbot up and running, pull the certificate, and then once everything there is good to go, it will shut down that container. Now, there is a chance that we could run into an issue here where it's like, hey, we weren't able to verify everything. If we get to that point, all we're going to do is rerun that command. If we don't run into any issues, great, we can move forward. If we do, we rerun that same command we just ran, and usually that will resolve the issue. Okay, some challenges have failed. That was kind of what I thought might happen. Again, I'm just going to rerun that sudo init certificate sh. We're going to put in our domain name again of dbtech.tips. Of course, you're going to put in your domain name for this, not mine. So that's what I'm going to put in there and hit enter. It's saying, hey, existing data found. See, we're kind of going through all of the different things that we thought we might run into in that bash script, and this is what we saw. We're going to hit yes. Hopefully this time we're going to go ahead and get that certificate. I've had to run this once or twice, maybe even two or three times in order to get it to work. Just one of those weird little quirky things with SSLs. So we're going to kind of see what happens here and then move forward from there.
A few moments later.
Okay, so after running that command a couple of times, the keen-eye among you may have noticed that the issue was that it was trying to pull from a different IP address. That's kind of one of the problems when you're testing things is DNS. DNS is almost always the issue, and it was in this case because it was trying to pull from a previous IP address where I was doing some testing. After running it again, here before, we can see that the detail is 45.79.51.236, and if we look at the command, when I run it, you can see that our actual IP address is 69.164.198.37, so that was kind of what was going on there. I gave it a few minutes to just clear itself. It did, so here we're good to go. Now we've got our certbot run. It's pulled the certificate for that domain name. So our next step will actually be to run the Docker Compose. But before we actually run the Docker Compose to bring up the necessary containers, let's give a look to what the Docker Compose actually looks like. To do that, what we're going to do is we're going to type in nano, dockercompose.yml. We're going to hit enter, and basically we're going to run 3 different containers here. We've got an nginx terminate, an nginx relay, and a certbot, and that's just to make sure that our certificates keep being renewed as they need to be every few months or however long certbot does its thing with Let's Encrypt. Of course, in each of these different services, we've got some different commands for build, restart, some volumes, some ports, and some commands. Those are just very basic things for each of these different containers to run. Once we kind of understand what's going on here, what we'll do is just exit out of there, and let's do a docker compose up -d. If you're not familiar with the -d command, that is detached. Basically what that does is if we don't have detached, we can run our docker compose up and it will run in here just like you would expect it to. However, if we close this terminal window, it will shut down those containers. So with the detached, it makes it so that it's not dependent on this terminal window being open. So that's all that's going on there. So what I want to do next is just hit enter. It will go through the process of building everything, compiling everything, getting it all up and running. Once it's done, then we're going to switch over to my phone and take a look at the process of getting a relay set up on the application on your phone.
A few moments later.
Okay, so after a couple of minutes, everything has completed. And down here at the bottom, we can see that it says creating a signal TLS proxy. All 3 of those have been completed. They're built, they're ready to go, they're up and running. So the next thing that we can do here is open a new tab. And we're going to go to signal.tube, like so, and then / #dbtech.tips and hit enter. And right here, we can see that it seems to be working. Everything is good to go here. Now, from my experience, you need to access this on your phone first. So let's jump over to my phone and see about getting this proxy added to the app on my phone. Okay, so here we are. We've got our Chrome browser open. What I'm going to do is type in signal.tube / #dbtech.tips and hit enter. So here it's saying, hey, let's continue with Signal. We're going to click continue. We're going to get logged in. And here it says proxy address dbtech.tips. As long as this all looks good, what we'll do is click use proxy. And now it says successfully connected to our proxy. And if we take a look up here, we can see that dbtech.tips is connected to the proxy. And that will allow us to not have to use Signal's default servers to connect to Signal, thus kind of bypassing any kind of restrictions that organizations or governments or whatever kind of thing may have put on our access to a communication service like Signal. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. Basically, we're just bypassing the actual signal.com or .org URL in order to still access Signal. So guys, there you go. There's how to set up a Signal relay in order to kind of bypass the actual Signal URL that may be blocked by an organization or a government. Of course, that's worst case scenario, but this is kind of being able to connect to Signal without directly connecting to Signal and thus kind of bypassing any of those restrictions. And this is one of those things that once you've got your URL set up, you can share this with other people and they can use it. I don't believe this will automatically get shared, out to the general masses, but if you wanted to set this up and share it in a forum or a group or something like that to give people access to Signal through your relay, this is how you go about doing that. So again, I want to thank Linode for sponsoring this video and being such a supporter of my YouTube channel. Again, head down to the description where you'll find a link to get $100 in free credit to check out their service, free for 60 days. Again, everything will be linked in the description as well, so you can follow along with this tutorial if you'd like to do that as well. But I think with that said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I do want to thank you guys for spending a few minutes of your day with me today, and I will talk to you in the next video.